All right, so we're back for another deep dive. And today we're going to be tackling something that's really got people talking lately. It's the whole impact of AI on artists. We've got a really interesting mix of sources for this one.
It really is such a fascinating time to be talking about creativity,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it feels like we're at this crossroads where art and technology are kind of colliding in ways that we never really could have imagined before.
Totally. And that brings up so many questions. Like a big one, I think, on a lot of people's minds is, could AI actually replace human artists entirely? I mean, one story that really jumped out at me when I was kind of going through these sources was about this concept artist named Fresh. And he had shared this experience on Twitter about how he got a call from this advertising company, right? Looking for his skills, typical stuff.
Right.
But here's where it gets interesting.
Yeah, let me guess. Did the company maybe mention something about their AI capabilities?
Exactly. They casually let it slip that the only reason they reached out to him was because their quote-unquote in-house AI technician was too busy.
Oh, wow.
So basically, a human artist was their backup plan.
Yeah, I can see why that would make an artist like Fresh really question their place in the future, right?
Absolutely. And it seems like this is becoming more and more common. As I was going through the research, I was honestly blown away by what AI is already capable of doing in all sorts of creative fields. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking generating these incredibly realistic images, composing music, even writing novels.
Right.
There are these programs like DALL-E and Midjourney, DALL-E being like an acronym for digital art and language generating engine.
Right.
And Midjourney being, well, Midjourney, that can create art from just like simple text prompts.
It's pretty astounding to see how quickly the technology is advancing too. Because these AI tools aren't just like mimicking existing art, They're actually capable of generating totally new styles and concepts.
Right.
Which is both exciting and a little bit unnerving when you really think about it.
Yeah, totally. And it's not even just images anymore, right? AI is being used to compose music across like all sorts of genres, writing scripts, poetry. There was this one AI music composer that I was reading about called AIVA, which stands for Artificial Intelligence Virtual Artist.
Wow.
And it's creating some really interesting scores for films and video games.
It really makes you wonder, how this is going to change the whole creative landscape. Are these AI tools going to become so sophisticated that one day they'll be able to produce art that's indistinguishable from human-made work?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And there's definitely a lot of fear out there about that. This idea that AI is just going to completely replace human artists. But one of the most interesting things that we have for this deep dive is the study that came out of Oxford University. And what's fascinating is that the study actually found that AI is more likely to become a tool for artists than a replacement.
I think that study is really interesting because it digs into the limitations of AI when it comes to creativity.
Yeah.
Because what it really highlights is that AI, at least for now, lacks this crucial element that human artists have, which is lived experience. Human experience influences how we see the world, how we feel our emotions, how we connect with other people. And those things are at the heart of art, right? And they're just very difficult, if not impossible, to replicate with algorithms.
And one of the researchers from that study, Anne Ployne, put it perfectly, I thought.
Right.
She said that artistic creativity is about making choices and develops in the context in which an artist works, the world we inhabit. This cannot be replicated using machine learning.
Yeah, that really resonated with me too, because it gets to the core of what makes human art so unique and so powerful. It's not just about the technical skill. It's about expressing something deeply human.
Absolutely. But of course, we have to acknowledge the other side of this argument, too.
Right.
There are definitely people out there who believe that AI really could spell the end of art as we know it. I mean, Jason Allen, the artist who won that art competition with an AI-generated piece, actually declared that art is dead. AI won.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah.
It definitely sparked a lot of debate in the art world, and it forces us to think about what really defines art, the role of the artist in this age of increasingly powerful AI.
Yeah, I mean, is it truly art if a human didn't conceive of it, even if the end product is like aesthetically pleasing?
Right.
So is this a black and white issue? Is AI just going to replace human artists completely? Or are there maybe areas where AI and human creativity can coexist or even collaborate?
I think that's what we need to unpack next. Let's delve into how AI might impact different types of artists.
Okay.
From those who are creating stock photos to those who are pushing the boundaries of contemporary art.
So if AI isn't going to like completely replace artists, what does this mean for like the way they work? Are there any areas where artists might be more vulnerable than others with this whole rise of AI?
I think one of the biggest concerns is the potential displacement of artists who produce work that's considered more, generic.
Okay.
Think stock photos, civil illustrations, that kind of thing. AI can already generate that type of content pretty quickly and cheaply,
Yeah.
which, could pose a real challenge for artists who are working in those fields.
Right, because if a company can just get an AI to create a totally acceptable image for a fraction of the cost and time, why would they even bother hiring a human artist?
Right, exactly. And we're already seeing this tension play out in the real world, too.
Oh, yeah.
Getty Images, one of the largest stock photo platforms out there, recently banned AI-generated content from their site.
Wow.
Clearly, they're kind of aware of the potential disruption that this technology could cause.
So it sounds like illustrators and people who are creating more like commercial art might need to start adapting pretty quickly to this new landscape. What about artists who are creating more conceptual or high-end work? Are they safe from the AI takeover?
Well, based on the sources we've looked at, it seems like those artists might have a little bit more breathing room, at least for now.
Okay.
AI still struggles with the kind of nuanced expression, emotional depth, and originality that really defines high-level art.
Yeah.
Think about artists like Damien Hirst or Jeff Koons, whose work is often very conceptual and relies heavily on their personal brand and reputation. It's hard to imagine an AI replicating that, at least for the time being.
So there's still this premium on human creativity and vision, especially in the fine art world. But that doesn't mean that even those artists can just completely ignore AI altogether, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about artists using AI as a tool to enhance their creative process.
Absolutely. AI can be incredibly useful for things like generating ideas, experimenting with different styles, or even just automating certain technical tasks.
Yeah.
It's kind of like having a superpowered assistant
Right.
that can help you explore all these different creative avenues.
I was reading about this artist, Rafik Anadol, who is really pushing the boundaries of what's possible with AI art. And he created this massive installation at the Museum of Modern Art, where he used AI to analyze and transform 2 centuries worth of artwork into this constantly shifting digital dreamscape.
Wow.
It just sounds incredible.
That's amazing. It's a fantastic example of how artists can use AI to create entirely new forms of expression that wouldn't even be possible with traditional methods.
Yeah.
It's not about replacing human creativity.
Yeah.
It's about expanding those possibilities.
And it's not just established artists who are exploring these new tools either.
Right.
There are all these platforms and apps popping up that are making AI art generation accessible to anyone with like a smartphone or a laptop.
Oh, yeah, totally.
It feels very democratizing in a way.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think that's honestly one of the most exciting aspects of this whole AI revolution,
Yeah.
because it has this potential to unlock creativity in people who maybe wouldn't have even considered themselves artists before.
Right.
We could see this whole new wave of art coming from these unexpected sources.
That's a really cool thought. But let's be realistic for a second, too. Even with all these potential benefits, there's still going to be artists who are feeling really anxious about all this, even threatened by the rise of AI. What advice would you give to artists who are kind of struggling to navigate this new reality?
I think the most important thing to remember is that AI is a tool. It's not some unstoppable force that's just going to magically wipe out human creativity.
Right.
Instead of fearing it, I think the best thing to do is to try to embrace it.
So kind of learn how to use these new tools to your advantage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Experiment with them. See how they fit into your workflow, and think about how you can use them to really enhance your own unique style and vision.
Yeah, so it's like instead of trying to compete with AI, find ways to collaborate with it.
I like that way of putting it. And remember, art is about more than just technical skill. It's about expressing emotions, telling stories, connecting with audiences on a human level. And those are all things that AI still struggles with.
That's a really good point. So even in an age of AI-generated art, those human qualities are still going to be incredibly valuable.
Right.
But this brings up another question for me. If AI can help us create art more easily, does that actually change what we even consider art in the first place?
Ooh, that's a big one. That's a question that philosophers and art critics are going to be debating for years to come.
Right.
I mean, does the act of creation have to involve a certain level of effort or struggle to even be considered art?
Right.
Does it matter who or what created the work, as long as it evokes a response in the viewer?
It's like if I use AI to generate this beautiful piece of music, is it still my creation, or am I just kind of curating the AI's output?
Right, and how would that change the way we value and appreciate art? Would we judge AI-generated art differently than human-made art, even if we couldn't tell the difference?
These are some really deep questions. It feels like this conversation is getting even bigger than just the impact on artists. It's about how AI is going to change our entire relationship with art and creativity.
You're absolutely right. This is something that's going to touch all of us, whether we're artists, art enthusiasts, or just people who appreciate beauty and creativity in the world.
So, what does this all mean for the future of art? What are some things we should be thinking about as we kind of move forward into this uncharted territory? It feels like we've just scratched the surface of this whole AI and art thing. What are some of the bigger, like, implications we should be thinking about?
Well, one thing that really stuck with me from the sources was this idea that human curation is going to become even more important in an AI-driven world.
Oh, interesting. I'm curious to hear more about that. What do you mean by human curation exactly?
Even if AI can, generate tons and tons of technically impressive art, it's still up to us humans to decide what's actually meaningful, what resonates with us, what deserves to be, shared and celebrated. It's like, think about the difference between a computer spitting out random musical notes and a composer carefully crafting a symphony.
Mm-hmm.
Both involve sound, but one has, real intention and emotion behind it.
That's a great analogy. So you're saying that human taste, judgment, discernment, all that becomes even more crucial in a world where we're just flooded with all this AI-generated content.
Exactly. And that actually ties into another really important point that came up in a lot of the sources,
Mm-hmm.
the need for critical thinking in an AI-driven world.
Yeah. Why is critical thinking so important in this context?
Well, as AI gets more and more sophisticated,
Mm-hmm.
we need to be able to distinguish between art created by humans and art that's created by machines.
Okay.
We need to understand, the context, the intentions, the potential influences behind the art we consume. It's not just about passively enjoying something anymore. It's about actively engaging with it and forming our own opinions.
So it's about asking questions like, who created this? Why was it created? What does it mean?
Exactly. And it's also about being aware of how AI might be shaping our own perception of art and creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, if we're constantly exposed to AI-generated art that kind of conforms to certain aesthetic standards, could that end up limiting our own creative thinking?
It's a really interesting point. It makes you wonder if AI could, like, inadvertently homogenize art or even, like, reinforce existing biases if we're not careful.
Exactly. And it highlights the importance of supporting and celebrating human artists who are really out there pushing boundaries and challenging norms. We need diverse perspectives and voices in the art world now more than ever. And I think it's also a reminder that, art is at its core a human expression.
Yeah.
No matter how sophisticated AI gets, I believe there will always be a place for art that reflects our shared humanity, our emotions, our stories, and our unique perspectives on the world.
That's a beautiful thought to end on. So to our listeners, as you go about your day, we'll leave you with this final question on Panamor. If AI could perfectly replicate the style of your favorite artist, would you still value their work as much? Why or why not? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI and artists. Until next time, keep exploring, keep creating, and keep those brains buzzing.